Hello, this is Ms. McGowan. We're going to work through our 9 weeks exam review. I'm going to do the we do, which is the left column with y'all, and then y'all are going to do the you do by yourself. All right, number 1 asked us to name 2 lines that are in the figure. So we need to find 2 points in order to make a line. So if you notice, this R here is not a point. It does not have a point next to it. So we have to use 2 of the other points, any 2 points that are actually on that plane. So if we can choose S and N, which would make line SN. We can choose O and N, Q and N, U and N. It doesn't matter. We are not choosing P or T or M because those are not on that plane. So we're just gonna choose SN for this demonstration, and we need to have arrows on both ends letting us know that it's a line. All right, number 2 asks us to find the value of X. So we need to first distribute. That's always the first step, is to distribute. So we need to distribute this 3 to the X. So 3 times X is 3X. And then the 3 to the 9, 9 times 3 is 27. And then we're gonna bring down the rest of the information so it can all be on the same line. And now we need to combine like terms. So we have a variable term here, 3x, and another one, 3x. And then we have a constant term, 27, and -4 that are all on the same side. So if we're combining like terms on the same side of the equation, we do that by just adding. So 3x plus 3x makes 6x, and then 27 plus -4 makes 23. So we're going to add 23 and set it equal to 12. Now we're going to combine from one side of the equation to the other, so we're going to use the inverse operation. So we're going to subtract 23 from this side, and what you do to one side, you do to the other. So we're going to subtract 23 over here. We're going to bring down what's left, which is 6x. Those 23's cancel, and 12 minus 23 is -11. Now our last step is to isolate that variable, so we're going to divide by 6. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Those 6's cancel, and we bring down the x that's left, and now our answer is -11 over 6, or you can convert that to a decimal by putting it in the calculator. Okay, number 3 asks us to identify the segment bisector. Remember, bisect means cut in half. So this bisects the segment in half. If it's been bisected in half, then we're going to have a part equals part equation. Anytime we see segment, bisector, or midpoint, we need to think part equals part. All right, here's our equation over here. We're going to start by bringing the smallest x over to the biggest x. So we're going to add 2x. What we do to one side, we're do to the other, so we're going to add 2x over here. 5x plus 2x makes 7x. We bring down the -7 and bring down the 14, and then those cancel. Next, we need to add 7 to both sides. Bring down the 7x. The -7, +7 cancel, and 14 plus 7 is 21. And then we're going to divide by 7 to isolate that variable x. 21 divided by 7 is 3. Now, we got x equals 3, but that is not what they're asking us to do. We need to find PQ, so we are not done. We need to plug that 3 back in for our x. So if we do that, we would have 5 times 3 minus 7. 5 times 3 is 15, and then -7 would give us 8. So this part equals 8. Now remember, part equals part, so this part is also 8. And the whole thing, PQ, would be 8 plus 8. So PQ total equals 16. All right, this next one, we're going to highlight the important information. So they want us to use segment addition postulate to solve for segment AC. That is the goal. Given that C is between segment A and E. So we're going to draw a segment here with A and E as our endpoints, and then C is going to be somewhere in between it, not necessarily the midpoint. So C to E, they said, is 20. And then A to C, they said, is 2x plus 5. And then the whole segment A to E, they said, is 125. So we have a part plus part equals whole equation. And if we plug that in, our first part is 2x plus 5, plus our next part is 20, and it's equal to the whole, which is 125. We can combine like terms here on the same side. 5 plus 20 is 25. And then we combine to the other side, so we're going to do the inverse. We're going to subtract 25. We bring down what's left, and 125 divided by minus 25 is 100. And lastly, we're going to divide by 2, which gives us x equals, okay, we got x, but now we need to find segment AC. That's what they told us to do. So we're looking at this part. So we're going to plug that x back into that equation. So 2 times 50 plus 5. 2 times 50 is 100 plus 5 equals 105. So our final answer is 105. All right, this next one says, given that point L is a midpoint, that's a big word there, midpoint of segment AW, solve for x and write what conjecture you can make. So firstly, we need to solve for x. So when we think midpoint, we need to think this part is equal to this part. Part equals part. So 19x minus 4 is going to be equal to 17x plus 28. Okay, we're going to bring the smallest x over to the biggest x, so we're going to subtract 17x from both sides, which gives us 2x minus 4 equals 28. And then we're going to add 4 to both sides, which gives us 2x equals 28 plus 4, which is 32. And then we're going to divide by 2, which gives us x is equal to 16. All right, we found x, which was the first part of our job, but now the next part says, what was the conjecture you can make? Well, when we think about conjectures and we have the word midpoint, what we can conclude is that if L is the midpoint, then the two parts are congruent. This part is going to equal this part. When we think midpoint, we are splitting that in half at the midpoint. So the two parts are going to be equal or congruent. All right, number 6 wants us to find the midpoint of segment KT given point T and K. So whenever we're given 2 point coordinates and we want to find the midpoint, we want to use the midpoint formula. If you notice, the midpoint formula is an x1, y1, x2, and y2. So we need to get that from the coordinates. So we're going to label our points as x1, y1, and x2, y2. Now we're going to plug them into the formula. All right, here they are plugged in the formula. Now we just need to solve. So 2 plus negative 2 is 0 divided by 2, which gives us 0 as our final. And then over here, 5 plus 7 is 12 over 2, and 12 over 2, or divided by 2, is 6. So our final midpoint coordinate is 0, 6. All right, this next one wants us to find endpoint E of segment EM, given that K is the midpoint, and then it gives us the coordinates for K and M. So I've gone ahead and drawn the picture of what we're doing here. What we need to remember is that when we have a midpoint, we have part equals part. So as we change in the x from endpoint to midpoint, we're going to change the same way from midpoint to other endpoint. So let's track the change from our x of our endpoint that we know to our midpoint. Well, 4 to negative 3, what we did was we subtracted 7. Now we're going to follow that same pattern from the x of our midpoint to our new endpoint, we're going to subtract 7. So -3 minus 7 is -10. All right, now we're going to do the same for the y's. So from 5, which is our y of our endpoint, to the midpoint, from 5 to 3, we subtracted 2. Now we're going to follow that same pattern from our midpoint y to our new endpoint y. We're going to subtract 2. So 3 minus 2 gives us 1. So our final endpoint, E, is -10, 1. All right, this next one gives us the endpoints are at -7 and 17, and we need to find the coordinates of point R that partitions 1/4 of the way from endpoint C. So when we're partitioning, we have these 3 steps over here that we need to follow. So you can write these down so you can have them on your test. So step 1 wants us to take the big number and subtract the small number. So our big number is 17, and then we're going to subtract our small number, which is -7. So we have minus -7, which turns those into a plus. So 17 plus 7 makes 24. And then step 2 is to multiply that number that we just got by our partitioning fraction, which in this case is 1/4. So in this case, you can multiply the whole number times the top of your fraction. So 24 times 1 is 24. And then we put that back over the denominator. 24 divided by 4 equals 6. And last step, we need to add that number that we just got, 6, to our small number. So our small number was -7. So 6 plus -7 makes -1. And that is where our partitioning point is going to be. All right, this one wants us to find the area and the perimeter of the following figure. The area, since that's a triangle, the area is going to be base times height divided by 2. And then for the perimeter, we're just going to add all sides. All right, let's find the distances that we can by counting. So those are vertical distance, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the horizontal distance you can count as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we can't just simply count a diagonal distance. We've got to find that distance using the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, in this case, our c is always going to be the hypotenuse, the diagonal side. So we're just going to plug in 5 for the horizontal side and 5 for the vertical side, and then solve. So 25 plus 25 equals c squared, and if we add 25 plus 25, we get 50, and that equals c squared, but we want c, not c squared, so the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root, and what we do to one side, we do to the other. So that square and the square root cancel, and the square root of 50 is approximately 7.1. So we found this c to be 7.1. Now we just need to plug into the formula. So for perimeter, we're going to add all 3 sides. So 5 plus 5 plus 7.1 makes 17.1. And then for the area, we're going to type in the base, which is 5, times the height, which is 5, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So 5 times 5 is 25, and then we're going to divide that by 2, and we get 12.5 as the area. All right, number 10 wants us to find the numerical values of all of the angles. So numerical values means what is the possible values of x degrees for an angle that are possible for each classification. So an acute angle is a small angle. It falls somewhere in between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. Now our obtuse angles are big angles, so they're bigger than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. And then our right angles, as you know, those are going to be equal to 90 degrees. And then lastly, our straight angles are going to be equal to 180 degrees. All right, number 11 wants another name for angle 1. So that means we need the vertex of our angle to be where the 1 is. So I've highlighted that in pink. So we need to name it by 3 points that are on that line with the vertex being in the middle of that point as we name it. So we can name this angle NPN or angle MPN. And the next part wants us to name 3 points that are collinear. That means that they are on the same line. Okay, so we need to be on the same line 3 points. So if you notice, we have a line here, N, O, and P are on. So let's go with that. So point N, O, and P are collinear. All right, the next one wants us to find the contrapositive of the following statement. Now remember, the contrapositive is the longest word, so it has the most jobs. So that means that we're going to switch and negate our statements. So our P in this case is I went to McDonald's, and then our Q right now is I got good French fries. So we need to switch the order, and then negate means add not to our sentence. But our if and our then are going to stay in the same spot. So we have if I did not get good French fries, then I did not go to McDonald's. All right, so we switched the 2 statements, the hypothesis and the conclusion, or the P and the Q, and then we negated by adding the word not to both. Okay, number 13 wants us to write the inverse of the following statement. Inverse means that we need to negate or add the word not to our statement. So if I am not dehydrated, then I should not drink water. Let's write that out. All right, there's the negation. So all we did was add the word not to the hypothesis P and the conclusion Q. All right, number 14 wants us to write the converse, which we memorize as the reverse. The converse is the reverse. So we need to switch the order of our hypothesis and conclusion, P and Q. And remember that our if and then is staying in the same spot. So if we write if, then we need to switch the order. So if I should go to the doctor, then I broke my leg. All right, and there's the converse, which is the reverse. All right, this next one wants the biconditional. So the biconditional is the if and only if. So we're going to use if and only if, and we're going to drop the word if and drop the word then, and then add if and only if to the middle. All right, we dropped the if, we dropped the then, and we added if and only if in the middle. That is the biconditional. All right, this one wants us to use the law of syllogism to make a conclusion. So with the law of syllogism, we want to highlight what is repeated and then drop it in our conclusion. So let's read it. If you exercise regularly, then you have a healthy body. If you have a healthy body, that is repeated. So we're going to highlight that part and we're going to get rid of it. So what's left over is our conclusion. If you exercise regularly, then you have more energy. All right, law of syllogism. Whatever's repeated, drop it and write what's left. That's your conclusion. All right, this next one wants us to find the measure of V, X, T. Well, if you notice, that is a part, not a whole. And we can see that the whole thing equals 90 degrees. So we have part plus part equals 90 degrees. All right, this first part we don't know, so we're just going to leave it as P. So P plus the second part is 46, has to equal 90. And then we subtract 46 from both sides, and we get the P equals 90 minus 46, which is 44 degrees. All right, this next one says that ray BD, so this ray right here, bisects angle ABC. If it bisects, that means it's cutting it in half. So this part is going to equal this part. So we're going to do part equals part. So our first part is 9x, and then it's going to equal 8x plus 3. All right, we're going to subtract 8x from both sides, which leaves us with x on this side, and those cancel, and we bring down the 3. So we get x equals 3, which is exactly what it asked us to find, which is the value of x. All right, this next one wants us to name 3 points that are coplanar. Remember, co means together, and then we can see kind of the word plane in there. So we need to be together on this same plane. Now, the only part that is not together on the same plane would be H. We cannot use that. Any of the other points are fair game. So I'm just going to choose D, G, and E. But you can use any combination of those points that are not H. All right, number 20 is a good old algebraic proof. Our very first thing is, oh, you guessed it. Our first reason is always, 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 always given. And our last statement is always, 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 always the mathy part, as I like to say, of the word prove. So that's going to be x equals 7. All right, now we're going to write the first given, the statement part of our given, which is 9 minus 4x equals negative 19. And now we're just going to write it again underneath the proof because all we're going to do is solve it. All right, the first thing that we need to do is combine our constants, so we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. When we subtract something from both sides, that is the subtraction property. And using the subtraction property, we get that negative 4x is equal to negative 19 minus 9, which is negative 28. So this part of our statement needs to go up here into the second statement box. All right, now we're just going to keep solving. So our last step is to divide by negative 4 so we can get that x by itself. This property right here is the division property. When we divide something from both sides, that's the division property. When we do that, we get x equals negative 28 divided by negative 4, which is positive 7. And that is our next statement, so we did it correctly. Woohoo! All right, this next one wants us to find the distance between the 2 points. So we can find the distance either by using the distance formula, which is right here, or we can rise and run from the left point to the right point and make a right triangle and use Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to show you Pythagorean theorem because I find it to be the easiest. So we're going to start from the left point, which is this 3, 2, and we are going to rise and then run over to the next point, the right point. All right, now we're just going to count the distances that we can. So we can count horizontally 1, 2, 3, 4, and then vertically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we cannot count diagonal distances. So this is going to be our hypotenuse C. So we're going to plug those values 4 and 6 into this equation and solve. So 4 squared is 16 and 6 squared is 36. And 16 plus 36 gives us 52, and that's going to equal c squared, but remember we want c, not c squared. So the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. And what we do to one side, we have to do the other. So the square root of 52 is approximately 7.2, and that's going to cancel the square and the square root, so we're going to be left with c equals 7.2, which is that distance that we're looking for. So that's our answer. All right, the next one wants us to solve for angle ABD. Remember, when we're naming our angles, the middle letter is always the vertex. So the angle is from here all the way to there. That is a straight angle, so it's going to be equal to 180 degrees. So what we have here is a part plus part equals 180 degrees equation. So our first part is 7 cubed minus 46 plus the next part, which is 3q plus 6, and it's going to equal 180 degrees. We can combine like terms on the same side by adding. So 7q plus 3q gives us 10q, and then negative 46 and positive 6 gives us negative 40, and then that's going to be equal to 180 degrees. We're going to add 40 to both sides, which will give us 10q equals 180 plus 40, which is 220. And then we're going to divide by 10 on both sides, and we're going to get q is equal to 22. All right, but it didn't ask us for q, it asked us for a, b, d. So we are going to plug it in for a, b, d, this angle. So if we plug that in, we have 7 times 22 minus 46. 7 times 22 gives us 154 minus 46, which equals 108 degrees. So this angle ABD is 108 degrees. Okay, next one, it wants us to solve for x. Now this looks like an X, this picture. So what I told my class is if it looks like an X, it looks like the Off-White brand symbol. So we are going to call those vertical angles if they are across from each other, across the vertex from each other. If they're vertical angles, then they are congruent. So the first part of the angle, 3x minus 4, is going to equal to the other side, which is 5x plus 7. Those are vertical angles. All right, we're going to take the smallest x away from the biggest x. So we're going to get negative 4 equals 5x minus 3x, which is 2x. Then we're going to bring down that plus 7. And then we're going to bring the 7 over here. And we have negative 4 minus 7, which is negative 11. And then we're going to bring down that 2x, and the negative 7, positive 7 cancels. Last step is to divide by 2 on both sides. So we get x is equal to a negative 11 over 2, or you can divide that to get a decimal. But our x is equal to negative 11 halves. And lastly, the moment you've all been waiting for, our final question, which says if the measure of r, q, t, so from r to q to t, is 155 degrees, what are r, q, s, and t, q, s? So the parts, what are the parts? Well, we have two parts and we have a whole, so we're going to set up a part plus part equals whole equation. The first part is 4x minus 20, and then plus the next part is 3x plus 14, and then we set it equal to the whole, which is 155. We can combine our 4x and our 3x by adding, so that's 7x, and then our negative 20 and our positive 14, which makes negative 6. And then we're going to add 6 to both sides. So we're going to get 7x is equal to 155 plus 6, which is 161. And then we're going to divide by 7 on both sides. And our x is going to equal 161 divided by 7, which is 23. Now it didn't ask for x, it asked for the measure of the two parts, so we need to plug that back in to those angles. So our first angle is 4 times 23 minus 20. And 4 times 23 minus 20 gives you 72 degrees for our first part. So R, Q, S is equal to 72 degrees. And then we know that the whole is 155, so we can subtract the part that we do know from that whole, and we get 83 degrees. So TQS, the second part, is 83 degrees. And there we go. Good luck on your test.